In our modern society, it is quite common to consider man as being separate from nature. But from the theosophical perspective, the opposite is true. We are inseparable parts of the one cosmic life. And as children of that cosmic life, we have all the wisdom of the cosmos in us. Like all entities, we humans mirror the big whole and follow the same universal processes of emanation and evolution that the whole cosmos does, as above, so below. In the secret doctrine, we find the teachings on gods, monads and atoms, in which the emanation process is described. To put it briefly, how divine beings, gods, emanate monads, who in their turn emanate atoms. In this way, the cosmos is coming into manifestation step by step. This emanation process starts with divine thought or cosmic ideation, initiated by a collective of divine beings. This forms the guiding intelligence, determining the patterns on all inner and outer planes of manifested nature. We humans live in the emanated sphere of consciousness of those divine beings, just like the life atoms of our constitution live in the sphere emanated by our consciousness. In the slide you can see a symbolic image of the fact that we are a link in the chain of consciousness with no beginning and no end. If we understand our function as one of the beads in the golden thread of consciousness, Sutratman, we understand our function as humanity in nature at large. In the following, we will elaborate on man as a symbol of nature by addressing the following questions. What is a symbol? What is nature? And finally, what is man and man's function in nature as a symbol of nature? What is a symbol? In general, the definition of a symbol is that it represents a certain idea or thought and that there is an artificial relation between the symbol and that idea. In this presentation, we assume, like Blavatsky did in Unveiling, that a symbol is an embodied idea and that symbol and idea are in essence one. Plato already stated that ideas are prototypes existing in divine thought. So man, as a monad, is an emanation, an expression, a symbol of divine thought. Similarly, our thoughts are expressions of our human consciousness with the potential to become human beings in the far distant future when we will be gods. Therefore, man reflects and symbolizes us microcosm, the macrocosm. What is nature from the theosophical perspective? Nature is the entire aggregate of everything that is, inwards and outwards, of all planes, in all spheres, throughout the boundless. Looking around us, we can see that nature is by definition relatively imperfect, because all beings are eternal pilgrims on their evolutionary path of perfection, always evolving and striving for even more perfection. How does nature work? Basically, nature works from the most spiritual to the least spiritual by the process of emanation. Take the example of an idealistic peace movement in human society. It starts with a few inspired men and women with a fundamental view on the principles of a non-violent peace movement. Their enthusiasm and inspiration inspire hundreds of people who live at home in their own sphere of influence. Those people start local initiatives in their own environment by inspiring and organizing people there. Together, a worldwide organization manifests and operates as the instrument for peace, following the original ideal of the initiative takers. It is indeed a hierarchy with different levels of consciousness. Relatively speaking, you can see at every level in the organization a similar process of emanation from the inside to the outside. Ideation, recognizing and forming of the most universal ideas and ideals, then building up of a corresponding mentality, and making this mentality happen through corresponding behavior and actions. The only difference between the different levels in the organization is the abstraction level and the scope of the actions. Is it the worldwide, national, or local ideal that is given shape? In the Theosophical literature, the descriptions of the emanation process follow a similar line of thought. Divine beings emanate through divine thought and cosmic ideation, monads, which form hierarchies of various levels of consciousness, resulting in the manifested world consisting of the aggregate of the kingdoms of nature. In the outer world, perceptible to our senses, the ideas and ideals finally result in concrete interactions between various living beings. Thus, all beings may learn their lessons in order to evolve. Now, what is, from the theosophical perspective, the position of man, if we consider all the kingdoms of nature? To understand that, let us address the question, what is man? Man is a composite being and a child of the stars, sun and earth. And again, being a child means that we, as monads, have been activated by emanation from divine beings who are in essence our deepest selves. More specific are our deepest selves, the inner God, active in the divine realms of the stars, and this inner God works through its vehicle, the Buddhi principle or inner Buddha, active in the realms of the solar system. The Buddhi principle comprises overview, coherence, discrimination, intuition, and is the organ of direct knowledge. It is the clothing of the divine spark within us, which instantly not only knows the truth, but also communicates it to our mind, our manos, assuming our mind is open to it. For the Buddhi principle, in its turn, is transmitted down to the human plane by the mind or manas, the inner teacher, in all its aspects. And if the mind of a man is crystal clear as the mountain lake, calm and at peace, it does reflect divine thought, for in that case it cannot transmit the non-divine. For all ripples and raging waves in this mountain lake are caused by the lower manas, our personal and selfish thoughts. But if we are superpersonal and selfless, man is, for the time being, like a god. The Buddhi in us will then be in resonance with the cosmic Buddhi. So from understanding the nature of Buddhi, it is clear what the potential and the mission of man is: to reflect and transmit the divine thought of the inner divine realms to the outer world. Because man, by developing manas, has become a self-conscious being and just crossed the tipping point towards self-directed evolution. And since the mind is sevenfold, man can train himself to focus his thinking on Buddhi manas. One more thought on the nature of Buddhi. In all traditions, the divinity within, Atman, has always been called a god, masculine. The consort, the Buddhi of Atman, has always been looked upon as feminine, hence the higher triad of father, mother and son. The German poet Goethe meant more than mere poetry when he said, "The eternal feminine draws us ever onward and inward." It does not mean woman in this context. It means that part of our nature to which and in which the God within works. Our individual Buddhi is that which gives us intuition, sensitiveness, and the ability to feel the suffering and sorrow of other living beings. It will evoke compassion and urges us to help those beings in their evolution. By now, it may be clear that the Dharma, duty, of man is typically on the mental plane. And also that our intuitive thinking, Buddhi manas, reflects divine thought and should guide our actions. Two examples. What characterizes your favorite restaurant where you keep going back? Just for the delicious and healthy food, or pleasant setting and friendly staff? Or is it the overall picture that attracts? Does the quality of the staff, good cooking, friendly service and attention for sustainability not stem from a shared mentality of hospitality? And could this exist without a clear ideal of what hospitality and sustainability really is? An atmosphere continuously radiated by the owners as living examples of it and shared by their staff? And is it not that ideal, that mental atmosphere and that hospitable service that makes us go back? Another example. You should never be attached to the form of your ideal. What matters is the soul of your ideal. Thus, an idealist politician, perhaps with pain in his heart, may have to leave his party when he has concluded that the party has abandoned the original ideal. How can man fulfill his function in nature? We have seen that man is a thinker with the mission to reflect and transmit divine thought. In letter 67 of the Mahatma letters, Master Kutumi explains that for the physical globe D of Earth, man is the sixth principle or spiritual soul, Buddhi. This confirms again that man, through the use of Buddhi manas, is the key player in the kingdoms of nature to reflect divine thought. In other words, it is the duty of man to be the steward of the world, giving direction to the evolution of life based on his moral compass, Buddhi manas. In the slide, you see again a symbolic image of the fact that we, as humanity, are a link in the chain of consciousness with no beginning and no end. Man should use his human ideation to find and form ideals focused on the common good and put them into practice. This ideation ideally starts by realizing that as man, you are nature, thereby identifying yourself with the oneness of all life. You are one with your fellow human beings, one with the earth and the kingdoms of nature, visible and invisible, further and less developed, one with the solar system, and so on. In short, universal brotherhood. In general, idealism is seen as something extra, as an icing on the cake. For Theosophists, idealism is a duty, since they have knowledge of the universal ideals from the divine thought or Theosophia. In the key to Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky says that Theosophy is the quintessence of duty. But at all times, we should remain sharp with respect to our idealism. We are working on with nature, symbolizing nature, to the degree in which we are indeed expressing the inner inspiration, the divine thought, to help our fellow beings in the world. We have to stay vigilant. The pitfall is that we place our ideals outside ourselves. For example, when we convince ourselves that we need another government first, before we can realize our ideal. Then we are under the illusion that we cannot fulfill our ideals now, but only when the outer circumstances have changed. The ultimate test is whether we succeed to be the change we want to see in the world. I want to give a concrete example of a human ideal that is perfectly in line with divine thought and within practical reach for anyone with a normal functioning mind. It is based on a talk by Dr. de Perrucker on the world's trouble and its cure. He discusses the ideal of not imposing your view on others. Here follow some quotes. What is the trouble with the world today? It is this: the desperate desires that men have to make other men accept their views. You see it everywhere. You see it even in countries at peace. You see it in our social relations among ourselves. Western men and women do not seem to be happy unless they are trying with more or less success to impose their will upon others, their thoughts, their ideas of what is right, the way the world should be run, the way things should be done, and especially the way other people should believe and feel. When you realize how greatly we value the sanctuary of our own hearts, the freedom of our own lives, and our right to think freely, you see how tragical the consequences always are. Do you know why all this happens? Simply because people, most of them, are unsouled. I do not mean they have no souls, but their souls are not active, are not working, are not productive. They are asleep. The greatest wisdom in human life, as taught by the Masters of Wisdom, is sympathy for the souls of man, and making your own life an example of what you preach: justice, brotherly love, sympathy, pity, compassion, helpfulness, refraining from doing any unjust act to whomsoever it may be. Your example will be followed by others because you will stand out like a beacon light on a dark night. That's the ideal, and I shall always hold it before me as an ideal. To sum it up, we can see the same process at every plane of the cosmos in 3 steps. Firstly, ideation, the forming of the most universal ideas and ideals. Then, the building up of a corresponding mentality. And finally, making this mentality happen through corresponding behavior. We human beings are able to reflect the divine thought by directing our thinking on Buddhi Manas. Man is a symbol of nature, especially because we can be the living examples of our ideals by making them happen. Theosophist is who Theosophy does. Thank you for your attention.